Monday, December 18, in a foreign court. Eventually, after the fall of Babylon and the rise of Medo-Persia, many of the Jews returned to their ancestral lands, but not all returned. Some remained where they had been living for a generation or more. With this background in mind, we have a bit of the context for the story of Esther. Esther 1 verse 2 reads, "In those days when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the citadel." Here is where the biblical narrative unfolds the Persian Empire under this king. In chapter 1, Queen Vashti falls out of favour with the king, which leads him to look for another queen, one to replace the now disfavoured Vashti. It's in this context that Esther and her cousin Mordecai first appear. Read Esther chapter 2, verses 1 to 9. What do these verses teach us about the situation of Mordecai and Esther? Esther chapter 2 verse 1. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus subsided, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what had been decreed against her. Then the king's servants who attended him said, "Let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins to Shushan the citadel, into the women's quarters, under the custody of Haggai, the king's eunuch, custodian of the women, and let beauty preparations be given them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti." This thing pleased the king, and he did so. In Shushan the citadel there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who had been captured with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon had carried away. And Mordecai had brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman was lovely and beautiful. When her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So it was, when the king's command and decree was heard, and when many young women were gathered at Shushan, the citadel, under the custody of Haggai, that Esther also taken to the king's palace, into the care of Haggai, the custodian of the women. Now the young woman pleased him, and she obtained his favour. So he readily gave beauty preparations to her, besides her allowance. Then 7 wise maidservants were provided for her from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maidservants to the best place in the house of the women. It seems that Mordecai, as a royal officer, was sitting at the gate of the palace and was residing in the city of Shushan with his adopted daughter or cousin, Esther. Because of their position and living where they did, they were immersed in the Persian culture. This must be at least part of the reason Esther was chosen to be presented to the king. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Haggai, who had charge of the harem, we read in verse 8. Read chapter 2, verses 10 and 20. What was going on here, and why would Mordecai give her such a command? Esther chapter 2, verse 10, Esther had not revealed her people or family, for Mordecai had charged her not to reveal it. And verse 20, now Esther had not revealed her family and her people, just as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther obeyed the command of Mordecai, as when she was brought up by him. Though the text does not say precisely why, it's not hard to guess. As aliens in a foreign culture and religion that we will see could be hostile, they were wise in keeping silent about their family and people. And so to finish today, what circumstances might you think of where it could be prudent not to be overt about our faith? Or should we never do that? And if not, why not? You have been listening to a reading of the Adult Sabbath School lessons by Dr. Percy Harrold and the inside story by his niece Sibylla. Apart from being provided free to those who are visually impaired, these audio lessons are available on the official General Conference Sabbath School and Personal Ministry app, on SoundCloud, Apple iTunes, and also on YouTube. Search for Percy Harrold Sabbath to find all of these. And remembering all the time that God is always faithful.